Oopsie, I didn't open my Google Docs. I started recording this video and I didn't even open my script to read. Jesus. So before I start this video, I just want to say real quick that this game took me 2 hours to record. Originally I was just going to use my speedrun footage from, when I speedran this game, but then I thought, no, I want it to be similar to the Decepticons video. It's a true sequel to my other video. It has to have the same style. So I sat down for the past 2 hours and I played this game and I forgot how difficult some of the missions are, and it had me ripping my fucking scrotum off. So I really hope you guys enjoy this video, considering how well the last one did. And with that being said, I hope you have a great evening. So back in like July or something like that, I made a video that was 45 or 48 minutes in length talking about Transformers Decepticons DS. This was a game I believed to be pretty niche, and the last thing I expected was a minor cult following. I feel a little surprised that this game does in fact have a minor cult following. I wasn't expecting comments like "this game shaped my childhood" or "yeah, me too, I loved this game." I genuinely thought that this video would get about 200 views and then drop off. But no, apparently this game is pretty active, and it's annoyingly not the variant of the game I hold the speedrun world record for. No, I actually hold the speedrun world record for the other version of the exact same game, Autobots. You know you're allowed to try and beat that record, right? Like, I'm not gonna try and stop you. Please feel free to beat this. Now this game actually has a lot less going for it. I'll just say it. Right off the bat, this game is actually worse than the previous version. I'm looking at this from a point of view without my nostalgia goggles come stuck to my face from jizzing over the story of the other game, because I feel like it's way more fair this way. The Decepticons version of the game has a completely altered plot than the movie has, and it also barely focuses on the Autobots. The game's protagonists and antagonists sit within the Decepticon faction, and I really loved that dynamic. The whole game was an internal power struggle, and the Autobots were just the mandatory goons you fought throughout the game's levels. The Autobots version of this game, however, basically just follows the story of the movie without the humans. The lack of overly Michael Bay, lighting-induced, sweaty, drippy 30-year-old men pretending to be teenagers really makes the story pop, and I'm really happy with that. So what's so different about this version of the game? What hasn't been said already in my previous video? Well, honestly, this video won't have a 48-minute runtime, that's for sure. There's not an assload of extra stuff here, but there's a significant enough story change for me to sit down and cover that, plus some of the characters and how they stack up in the multiplayer. I'm going to cover some basic categories there, ranging from how they stack up compared to the Decepticon characters, and also just how they stack up in general, as in how fun they are to play in comparison to the other game. To start things off low, let's go over the plot.
Are you doing the Fortnite emote?
So the plot of this game is basically the plot of Michael Bay's 2007 Transformers movie with a few tweaks. Bumblebee has launched the Allspark into space to prevent the Decepticons from getting a hold of it. Megatron chased it down to Earth, where he crash landed and ended up stuck in the ice for millions of years.
Damn like cheeseburgers.
And now we pick up the game in the ripe and present day of 2007, where we have finally arrived on Earth to chase both Megatron and the Allspark down. The game itself picks up in a very similar way to the Decepticons version, where you have basically the same intro as before, but this time Ironhide is the one to greet you, not Barricade. I'll skip over this part of the game because it's literally identical to the other version, but just without Keith David's performance. So once we're in the City of Tranquility, we radio through to Optimus Prime, who puts us on a mission with Bumblebee. This mission requires you to run around the city scanning radio towers, looking here, there, and everywhere for the glasses. This is the only human element from the movie that's been translated into the game's context, and I'm not gonna lie, I really wish we had shitty low-poly Shia LaBeouf in this game to go along with it. You remember Super Mario 64 DS, or the Super Mario Bros. Game on the DS, where if you closed the DS lid, you'd be fucking screamed at by Mario with that loud goodbye sound effect? Bye-bye! I feel like they could have done a similar thing in this game.
You know, you damn like
So anyway, you scan all of the radio towers and you pinpoint the location of Sam's glasses. Bumblebee also gives you an explanation as to why you're actually looking for the Allspark 2.
Why don't we just destroy it? I've never seen Cybertron. I've always dreamed of seeing it one day.
It's cool that we even get this explanation, since, if I remember rightly, in the movie all we get is that it's an all-powerful cube that creates life. That's not that impressive. My ballsack can do that, but whatever, we're getting off track. So the next mission has you play as Bumblebee, heading over to Sam's house to look for the glasses.
You're too late, Autobot. I've already got what you came for. If you want it, you're gonna have to take it from me.
This mission is effectively the mission from the Decepticons game where you fight Bumblebee in this exact same spot, but this version is a lot less dramatic. This version of the fight has you chase Barricade all the way to the map's main bridge, dodging police fire on the way as Barricade gives a wanted report to nearby officers over the radio. I think this is kinda cool, but there's not a lot going on with it. You just kinda drive from A to B and then lazily slap Barricade around for a while before you beat him. In the Decepticons version of the game, you fight Bumblebee periodically. He stops twice before stopping one final time for you to take him out. You get to brawl in 3 different areas overall, all incorporated directly into that chase sequence. It really feels like he's trying to get you off of his tail, whereas in this version of the level, it's kinda like he's leading you away from the area you were previously in. This doesn't really make sense considering Barricade's character in the Decepticons version of the game, but it's whatever. I also think the Decepticons version of this level is structured a lot better too, since if you're playing this on a fresh save and not the mission replay feature where you have all your max level OP weapons, all you can do at this point is throw a 1-2 punch and shoot your light weapon. You're not that strong at all, and therefore don't really do much damage. The 3 fight structure of the Decepticons mission is way better for this, as it breaks down the fight time into small bite-sized chunks, so as to not make the fight seem too monotonous. This Autobots version, however, has you follow Barricade to your destination to then monotonously mash the A button on him for 5 minutes until you drain all of his health down. It's not bad, believe me, it's not bad, I like it, but it's nowhere near as fun as the Barricade version. Anyways, I ranted on that a little too long, so let's move on. So Bumblebee beats Barricade, who runs away, and he tells the Autobots that the information got from Barricade points to Megatron.
Shut your bitch ass! Someone come in and shoot your...
Optimus Prime sends your custom character in Ironhide to go investigate. You go to the Arctic, which is this game's exclusive location, more on this later, and try to find Megatron. Surprise, surprise, he's not here. He's been moved by the humans to a secret facility, but what is here is an interesting tie-in with the Decepticons version of the game. We get a Starscream boss fight wherein he claims he's here on a personal mission. In the Decepticons version of the game, your custom character tells Starscream that Megatron may be located in the Arctic, and so it's safe to assume that the secret mission he's on is to potentially assassinate Megatron himself before the Decepticons can revive him. I thought it was a cool little tie-in, especially considering neither game is canon in their specific universe, if that makes sense. But other than that, this boss fight is the only part of this game that Starscream is in, and after this we never see him again. It's weird, all things considered, but I suppose he's got such a massive role in the other game that I suppose they didn't really want to put too much of him in this one. They did the exact same thing for Optimus Prime in the other game too, so I suppose it makes sense to keep the exclusivity. Anyway, the shit we're looking for isn't here, but we recovered a file called Project Iceman. Now if you've seen my Decepticons video, you know what this is, but for those of you that don't, it's a file containing Megatron's location. There you go. That's all it is. So we head on over to Tranquility again, where we now have to take out the city defenses to allow the Autobots to arrive on Earth safely. I really kind of find it interesting as well that the Transformers who have dedicated themselves to protecting life are destroying their only defenses from extraterrestrial attacks. But that's just me. There's a similar mission to this in the Decepticons version of the game too, where we do a similar thing as our custom character. This mission has us do it as Bumblebee, which I think was intentional from the devs considering blowing shit up isn't exactly hard, but when you make us do it as the weakest character in the game, it really kicks things to the next level. I'll go into this more later in the video, but Bumblebee really is the worst character by a landslide. Anyway, we clear the defenses and Optimus Prime arrives in the city. After Prime is done pressing his tits to the sky, we get an introductory scene to the Autobot crew, basically replicating the movie's scene but without Shia LaBeouf. After that, we have this mission with Jazz where we fight Blackout, and that concludes with this cutscene where Prime finds out that Megatron and the Allspark are being held in the same facility.
They have no idea how deadly that combination could be.
So Prime sends Bumblebee on this borderline suicide mission to help them leave the city, and Bumblebee gets captured because your custom character led people to him. Like the way that they have Bumblebee captured in this game, it just kind of happens and your custom character is just kind of like, yeah, I was fighting people in the other part of the city and they must have followed me here because I didn't actually kill them all. And now you're captured because of it and I'm not gonna help you fight them. It was just weird. It just felt off. And real quick, I'm just going to interject. The writing in this game is actually a lot worse than the Decepticons one as well. The dialogue in the Decepticons one is actually pretty good. This one feels corny. It feels like child playing with action figure type dialogue. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very generic, all of the lines in this game. It just doesn't really work for me. Anyway, the humans take Bumblebee in for experimentation, just like in the movie, and they take him to the exact same place as the Allspark and Megatron, just like in the movie. There are some filler missions here leading up to Bumblebee's rescue, but one I wanted to touch on was this stealth mission with Jazz. Since I've effectively covered a lot of this game already in the Decepticons video, I want to highlight some of the more standout missions here rather than covering every single one of them. This stealth mission with Jazz is a total standout mission. You're tasked with driving like a normal person without hitting any other cars or going off-road. You have to totally avoid detection here, which is cool and all. I like that dynamic in games. In a game like this where you're almost encouraged to drive like an absolute lunatic and use everything you see as a ramp, it can prove pretty difficult. This mission is also probably the hardest mission to speedrun too. One small mistake and you'll have to start the mission all over again, and I'm pretty sure I haven't not messed this up on my speedrun attempts. I made those attempts earlier on in 2021, and almost every time I'd go slightly off-road or bump the back of a truck or something. It's a fun mission that ends with a map-wide shootout, and I just really enjoy it. A few missions later we get this mission with Prime, and it's actually the first mission with Prime. By this point, Bumblebee has been freed and he's grabbed the Allspark on his way out of the prison. This part of the game was mentioned in the Decepticons version, but we never actually saw it, so it's cool to see it here. This mission has you escort Bumblebee out of the area, destroying military roadblocks that stand in your way. Eventually you come face to face with Barricade and a random Decepticon goon, and it triggers a boss fight.
Let's not make this complicated, Prime. I'm gonna ask you nice one last time. Give me the Allspark, or me and my friends here will have to start getting nasty.
This boss fight is a ton of fun, mainly because you're just downright broken during it. This is the only boss fight in the entire game where you face a main character and you're able to send them flying with your attacks. You can also throw Barricade here, which is something you can't do to anyone else in either of these games' boss fights. You can absolutely manhandle him and his sidekick, and it's just a lot of fun to do. You fight alongside Bumblebee, who's kind of brain dead, so you're going to want to protect him because if he dies, you're going to have to restart the whole mission, and you don't really want to be doing that. Although, that's not necessarily a bad thing though, because it's just an excuse to come and kick the shit out of Barricade some more. I'm pretty sure this fight was programmed this way to make you feel powerful getting to play Optimus Prime for the first time. The main character of the franchise in his first mission has you rocking out to the main theme of the game alongside the secondary protagonist throwing boss enemies around like they're high school dodgeballs. You can even one-shot Barricade if you toss him into the nearby lake too. You feel really powerful during this mission, and it definitely stands out in the grand scheme of things. A boss fight that's not particularly hard, but one that's a ton of fun. You can go haywire and demolish both of your enemies, but you kind of have to restrain yourself just enough to where you won't damage Bumblebee himself in the crossfire. It's fun, makes you think a little more than usual, and overall just makes you feel good playing it. 9 out of 10 boss fight, moving on. So after this, Optimus kills Barricade in a less satisfying death scene than his alternate version. Though in this version of the story, he really doesn't have a big role at all, so who really cares? Megatron breaks out of the ice in the next scene over, and we head back to Tranquility to run away with the cube. Oh wait, I forgot one more thing we have left in the Hoover Dam section of the game. I actually forgot something that's worth mentioning. We have a boss fight with Brawl in his one and only appearance in this game. This is such a jarring boss fight to me, because the Barricade one that we used to introduce Optimus was so representative of his character that this one has you feel absolutely powerless in comparison. It just really confuses me in terms of what they're trying to portray. In short, Brawl is extremely powerful. His melee and ranged attacks will melt your health like piss on butter, so you don't want to approach this guy at all. The best way to beat him is to run circles around him, firing your missiles, and then slap him with a few tanks in the second phase of the fight. Once you know how to beat him, it's not hard, but for newcomers to the game, you're probably gonna die on this level at least once. That's simultaneously the best and worst thing about this fight though. The fact that it's great on your first try, but once you figure it out, it loses its fun factor. The enjoyment from this level stems from trying to work out how to beat this guy in phase 2 of the fight, and once you figure out how to do it, it loses a lot of that fun factor. I also just spoiled how to do it in this video as well, so happy Christmas I guess, go have fun. Anyway, you kill Brawl and we're off to the city. So we're back in the city and we have a few action-packed missions before the final boss that I'll cover in a lightning round. Mission 1 has you play as Bumblebee fleeing Blackout. As he chases you and shoots you from the sky, he only shoots the red cars on the road, so avoid those and you'll be fine. If you do touch the red cars, however, he'll melt your health super quick, so just try not to do that. If you're a good driver, this mission boils down to driving from point A to point B. That's all there is to it. After this mission, you get a boss fight with Ratchet and Blackout on a rooftop. This one's pretty cool, but again, it boils down to mashing the fire button at him as he strafes along the rooftop. He rarely attacks you in his robot form, and his missiles are pretty easy to dodge. If you know what you're doing, then just point and shoot, you'll be fine. After this, we get a 3-stage mission where you play as your custom character fighting alongside the Autobots. Phase 1 has you defend Ironhide for 2 minutes before you're tasked to go and find Jazz and then defend him for 2 minutes. After that, you go downtown to defend Bumblebee for 2 minutes, and I'm starting to notice a pattern here. After you protect Bumblebee for the allocated time, Megatron swoops in and steals the cube from him, fleeing with it deep into the city. This leads us to the final boss fight of the game, and what is probably one of my favorite boss fights fights in these games, period. The fight starts like the Starscream fight from the Decepticons game. You play your custom character and attack Megatron from behind to try and knock the Allspark from his hands. Also, Prime is getting bodied in the background of this fight as well, but I really wouldn't worry about that unless you're slow as shit, because he has a bunch of health to work with. Anyways, in true Starscream fight fashion, you take the cube and clock Megatron and his mega nuts with it, and then we begin the main battle. I've been waiting to talk about this fight because it's just so pure. The AI for Megatron here feels like another person. I don't know how to describe it, but they programmed him to act so sporadic and random throughout this fight. He'll do things seemingly without thinking, like dashing away from the area to retreat, as a real player would probably do to regain health in the multiplayer mode. He'll switch between using ranged and melee weapons, and on top of that, he moves the fight around the city. You could take this fight wherever you wanted, and the likelihood is you'll end up fighting all over downtown. This is pretty accurate to the movie, more so than any other part of the game, and I just really appreciate how fun this fight is. It's engaging, has you chasing and being chased if you're running to grab some health. It just feels like a 2000s boss fight. Straight up, all-out brawl. A lot of boss fights in video games now have you doing some mini-game or pattern to beat, but this game just had you use everything you had in your arsenal against an opponent who's doing the exact same to you. He's not super easy either, and because of his random nature, sometimes he'll attack slowly, sometimes he'll come at you with an onslaught of attacks, and if he does that, then your best option is to not fight back at all because he'll shred your health when you do so. It's a lot of fun and definitely the standout mission of the game. So once you beat Megatron, we get this ending cutscene.
Optimus, if you destroy me, you'll destroy the Allspark as well. You will never bring back your precious Cybertron! I will do what I must.
Prime, I see Cybertron. It's all around us. Here on Earth. Make this our new home. The humans need us. And we need them. Protect them. And they will protect us.
Your name will be remembered throughout the ages for the sacrifice you have made here today. We will never forget. I will never forget. For now, the Decepticon legions are vanquished. And though we have sacrificed much, fate has yielded an unexpected reward. A new world to call home. We live among its people now, hiding in plain sight. Until the day comes when we are needed again to fight the forces that feed on chaos. I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message to all surviving Autobots, taking refuge among the stars. You are not alone. We are here. We are waiting.
The ending of this game much closer resembles the ending of the movie, and for me, I don't like it as much as the other ending. This game felt a lot less intimate with its characters, and was based on material I'd already seen. The Decepticons story had a more intimate connection with the characters and their motivations as opposed to Prime's I want to protect everything, but also fucking murder hundreds on my bloodthirsty rampage. I'm just not as interested in generic do-gooder characters with no real struggles or conflict to face. This game's story is more of your classic good versus evil, whereas the other game is all about the evil and the conflict regarding the power struggle within the evil faction. There you're seen as a pawn, lesser than the main characters carrying out orders to benefit them. Here we're treated like equals. I don't want to be Prime's equal. My character clearly wants to be degraded. I think it's just important to critique something that you love to really appreciate it in its entirety, because I feel like acknowledging something's flaws gives you a better understanding of what you're working with. Good story, it works for what this game is doing, and it's a faithful translation of screen to game. I'm also completely blinded by nostalgia goggles. This game probably wouldn't hold up if I didn't play it as a child. So now that we've covered the basic story and plot of the game, let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay from this game to the Decepticons version is virtually identical. This game and the alternate version have the exact same engine, mechanics, and everything in between. The gameplay does feel different, however. The major downfall for this game is the lack of variety in character playstyles. Literally everyone you play as is a car or a truck. They all play exactly the same, with the same vehicle and robot mechanic. They all kind of jump the same, and they're all similar speeds. The Decepticons version of the game has you play as 5 different characters with diverse gameplay. One's a car, one's a helicopter, one's a tank, and then you have 2 jets. The 2 jets play pretty similarly, to be fair. However, Starscream has a pretty terrible jump, and he's slightly slower on his feet, whereas Megatron's a little more agile. My point is that the characters don't really have variety in the Autobots version. The difference between playing as Optimus Prime and playing as Ironhide is not that stark besides the stats difference. The most unique character aside from Optimus himself is Jazz. His weapons are super cool and function similarly to how Megatron's do. He can toss like 5 energy grenades in front of him all at once, blowing up everything in a cone radius, and it's a lot of fun to use. He can also jump really high, is the fastest vehicle, and he has a sword. Besides that, there's not really much variety. Bumblebee is basically just the worst Jazz, and it shows. I like using him for the story missions to get that extra challenge, but there's really no reason to use him in something like the multiplayer mode when you could just use someone like Jazz. Overall, what do I think about Transformers Autobots DS? I like it a lot. I really do. I remember buying it from the old Blockbuster Video in my hometown when I was like, what, 7, 8 at that point? I beat it the exact same night. I love this game and it holds a lot of memories for me. It's so cool to be able to talk about it all these years later and see it from a different perspective with the nostalgia goggles off. This game, though inferior to its Decepticon-driven counterpart, definitely has a place in the NDS library. All the praise I gave to the gameplay and mechanics in the Decepticons video still holds up for this game. I don't dislike it at all. I think its main flaws stem from trying to closely follow the movie, which the Decepticons version did not, and thus had a lot more freedom. It felt like it stood on its own. The main console versions of this game did that, and that was fine, but for these handheld versions, I would have liked to see something fresh. With this one at least. The levels aren't as replayable, the boss fights are a lot less memorable, and the soundtrack isn't as good. It still kicks ass, and as a DS game based on a movie about war propaganda that would spawn a racist sequel with terrible dialogue, I'd say this game does an amazing job. 7 out of 10, would speedrun again.